water. Here with us now is the CEO of a company called Xclear, nasal sprays, Nathan Jones, who joins us. You've been an advocate, right, sir, a supporter, it's fair to say, of RFK Jr., you know, in the past, and some writing, right, and some of what you've written?
Very much so.
So what would you say about some of these issues? Let's talk about fluoride first, about this bill. Your company's actually based in Utah. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll get into some of the other things. So what do we need to know, or what do you think we should know?
Well, I'm happy to see it out of the water. I don't think that's a good delivery system for it. I think there's too many negative side effects of using fluoride in return for the benefit that you get from it. Fluoride really, all it does is it makes your enamel stronger. It makes your enamel more resistant to the acid created by the bacterial infection, but it doesn't actually address tooth decay. It doesn't address the bacterial infection that causes it. And that's something that dentistry has really not gotten a good hold of. There's lots of things out there that you can use. You can use xylitol toothpaste, xylitol chewing gum, because that actually gets rid of the strep mutans bacteria in your mouth that create the acid. You can make your teeth more resistant to it, but if you're going to let that bacterial infection fester in your mouth, you're going to get a lot more systemic chronic illnesses, which is what we've seen since they put fluoride in the water.
Yeah, I was reading an op-ed that you wrote about it. I believe it was in the Washington Times, where you talked about some of those exact issues that you just articulated now. The pushback from those who disagree with you, one of them is on, you know, dental health, which you mentioned, and you say that's, you know, doesn't necessarily apply. Here's the Washington Times. But also kind of equity, where some low-income Americans, they say, well, this is the only kind of preventative dental care that they might get. What do you say?
I think that much better would be to hand out chewing gum with xylitol in schools. And we have done the numbers on it, and for about $25 a year, and you'd have to do it for 2 years, but you have these kids chew gum. And the University of Michigan Dental School did these studies decades ago, and they showed that not only are you getting rid of the strep mutans in your mouth, but you're getting 42% fewer respiratory infections. You're also, the University of Washington Dental School went back like 10 years after they did this study, and the kids still had a protective benefit from having used xylitol chewing gum 8 years before.
Now, your point of view, and this is I think background sometimes is interesting where someone's coming from. How much was it influenced by what happened during COVID and afterwards? Like I said, you got a nasal spray, right, company? It feels like you feel like the government was out to get people like you then that had a different idea of what we should have been doing. And I know they literally were in some cases. It seems like some of the cases that they were making against you might now be dropped. But how much was your view of some of these issues influenced by that, whether it's this or we're going to talk about the measles? And what would you say about COVID?
Well, I think that my view of our government and our public health system changed radically during COVID.
Right.
And the reason why that is because early on in COVID, we knew that using nasal sprays, whether it's salt water, whether it's with xylitol, iodocarotene, any of these products could have stopped the epidemic, the pandemic, really before it started. They had a study out of Vanderbilt University that the NIH paid for, where they used just salt water to rinse out the upper airway of a bunch of patients that had COVID. All of them were better in under a week. And they had the data from that in May of 2020, and the FTC sent warning letters to us and to other companies in our industry telling us not to share that data.
So I bring it up for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not going to say it's the reason President Trump won, but there was some sort of a blowback in communities maybe that wouldn't have been likely to support a Republican in the past who said, well, you know what? I want to go in a different direction. I didn't like the way. They agree with you. They don't like the way it was handled. But then, at the same time, they say now something like this measles story comes up. And RFK Jr., who you support, they said, well, I don't want to go too far in the so-called other direction either, right? So how do you balance that out? How do you think that Kennedy should handle measles? There's a lot of pressure on him to see, given his background, what he's going to do.
There's a lot of pressure, but I really do believe that the media is blowing it out of proportion. More people are going to die this year from tooth decay than they are from the measles. Okay, they're going to die from tooth decay. Tooth decay is an ongoing epidemic in our country that's been going on for decades, and they haven't addressed it effectively. More people are going to die from it. And tooth decay is easier to prevent than the measles.
But you would support but the vaccination efforts, you don't think should be more public with some of that? Well, we have to go in a second, I'm sorry, but real quick on the...
I do believe that in vaccines, if they work, I think there's a lot of vaccines that are not tested that don't work, and that we need to get that figured out.
All right, Nathan Jones, we appreciate your point of view and having the conversation. We'll try to have it a little bit longer next time you're on. Thanks for coming on today.